This is barely 1 week to Mazi Nnamdi Kanu's court case, which will be on the 4th of November. And I know that right now, the pressure is mounting on him as to the next steps he will or should take, as no one knows what to expect, with the case slowly but surely coming to an end as the court looks forward to its final written address. The fight for our existence, justice, and freedom has been a fight that we have been engaging in before, during, and after the Civil War. That is the fight that Mazi Nnamdi Kanu is fighting, has been fighting, and is even fighting inside the court. A fight he has been fighting for his people. And as you know, that fight did not start with him and will not end with him. For those who are wishing him bad, this is a very bad news for you. This fight did not start with Nnamdi Kanu and will not end with Nnamdi Kanu. If you want evidence, here is the evidence.
We shall never go back to Nigeria again. God's grace will surely emerge as a nation. And so, as far as this war continues, we'll fight to the last man.
My name is...
Before the war, Guy Akobu was a lawyer. A refugee from Port Harcourt, he talks about his brothers.
As an ordinary Biafran, I have been affected by this war, just the same way as millions of others. This is one of the main squares in the town of Umuahia. It's right opposite the market. Now most of the stores are open, not because they do a lot of business, but because they just have to keep open to make believe as if life is still normal, as if they're still carrying on their normal day-to-day business. They don't sell much, and even at the prices which they sell, the ordinary man in the street can't afford to pay for these products, but still they have to keep open. That is those who are not employed in essential services. When people go to the markets and they find that prices are so high, really there ain't much they can do about it, because they know it's not the fault of the traders, but the people are really not bothered. It does not affect their morale. In fact, one thing which has helped Biafrans to bear and to sustain themselves is the extended family system. Every Biafran considers any other Biafran as his own brother or sister. And if he finds anyone hungry, he takes the person in and gives him some food. You see, we are interdependent and we treat ourselves as brothers as one, because we are all undergoing the same suffering and the same hardship. Can't find any Biafran begging. People are really ashamed to go begging either for food or for money. They prefer to do an honest day's work for their daily bread, because we understand what we're fighting for, and we prefer to make any sacrifice, whatever, no matter how long it lasts, so as to get our fundamental rights. That is the right to exist as a people, the right to protect ourselves, the right to our home, to practice our religion, to live as we would like to live.
It was clear in that video for the enemies of Biafra, for the enemies of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, to see clearly that Nnamdi Kanu is a son, is a product of a struggle that did not start with him and will not end with him. So that you know and be wise enough in whatever you are doing in that court to know that whatever you are doing in that court, if it's not going to lead to the justice, freedom of the people of Igbo land, if it's not going to lead to the emancipation and the final verdict that will lead to joy and freedom of Nnamdi Kanu, it's only going to lead to the continuation of the same thing that has been happening for decades. And I know that Nigeria is very comfortable in that situation, so long as their masters in Britain are getting the oil and gas, they do not care. And so do we. We do not care if you are thinking that one day we are going to bury the struggle. If you are thinking that one day we are going to say, okay, we have had enough, and we are going to open up our doors to Fulani herdsmen, to bandits, to terrorists. We are going to allow our daughters and our mothers to be defiled in the farms. If you are waiting for the day we are going to surrender and say that we are now comfortable in this contraption, that day will never ever come. And that day will never come, most importantly, with the injustice be done to Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. Day by day, the refusal to treat him medically, the refusal to release him, as the 5-6 courts have already attested to. 5-6 courts, even in Nigeria, have said this man is free, this man is innocent, release him. You have refused to release Nnamdi Kanu. And that is the highest level of impunity that a government will ever give itself. These are not our courts. These are your courts who said, release this man, and still you hold him down. Nigeria is so corrupt that even the system is fighting the same system. It's Nigeria who said that Nnamdi Kanu is innocent. Not British court, not Igbo court. Nigerian judiciary said it. 5 of them, and they awarded damages. But what did you do? You sat upon the judgment because you think you have the power, exposing the case as a 100% political case. Let me read this for you. As the calendar edges towards November 4th, all attention is once again focused on the Federal High Court, Abuja, where Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, the detained IPOB leader, is expected to continue his long-running trial. With the case gradually approaching to its end, many are reflecting not only on the coming proceedings, but also on the series of legal victories that Kanu has recorded so far. Victories that, despite their significance, have not translated into his release yet. And that is because the federal government has sat on his release. And that is because the courts have released him, but the federal government decided to disobey the court. It's only Nigeria, it's only in that republic of the zoo that have the effrontery to control all the arms of government and take all their powers and put it in Aso Rock and say that you're in a democracy. I don't want to say much about that. Let me continue. But it's very funny that somebody can say that the judiciary has a law, has a role to defend the law, to uphold the law, and you go to the judiciary to interpret something for you. And when judiciary interprets it for you, you still say no. That means you are in charge now. You are a god. You are no longer a country. You are the god of Nigeria. Nigeria does not have law, does not have executive and judiciary. Nigeria has gods. Gods. That is why revolution is sweeping the whole Africa. Revolution everywhere. Over the years, Kanu has secured several favorable judgments from different courts. In October 2022, the Court of Appeal in Abuja discharged and acquitted him of all charges, ruling that his extraordinary rendition from Kenya to Nigeria was unlawful and violated international conventions. The court held that since his return to Nigeria was not carried out through due process, the federal government had lost jurisdiction to continue his trial. That was a judgment that was meant to strike out the case. That was a judgment that was supposed to send Nnamdi Kanu back to where they, kidnapped him from. That was a judgment that should have told Nigeria, come, wash your hands off this case. But Nigeria is one of the most stubborn countries I've seen in my life. Very stubborn country. That is why the kind of poverty and suffering they are going through cannot be equated with any country in Africa or the world. Because of the wickedness. A country that kidnappers will be kidnapping you, will call upon the police and security agency, they cannot even help you. They cannot even help you. But when somebody opens his mouth and mention Tinubu, mention Buhari, mention Aisha Buhari, before 24 hours, they'll locate that person. That is the country you find yourself. They do not have care for human life. They don't care. However, the government immediately filed an appeal at the Supreme Court and obtained a stay of execution. Rather than comply with the court, they went and bullied the judges, collected stay of execution, and from that moment, they started harassing judges, harassing them. That is why Nnamdi Kanu's case is still haunted today without any movement, like a tortoise, because they harass they blackmail, and they threaten judges, effectively keeping him in detention despite appellate judgments. This pattern of judicial victories overshadowed by executive resistance has become a defining feature in Kanu's legal ordeal. Kanu's arrest and rendition from Kenya remain a major point of controversy. A high court in Nairobi, Kenya ruled that his abduction, detention, and transfer to Nigeria was illegal, and that his fundamental rights under Kenyan and international law was violated. The court ordered the Kenyan government to pay compensation and to pursue accountability for the unlawful act. This ruling reinforced the argument that Kanu's transfer to Nigeria was not an extradition, but a violation of sovereignty and due process, a stance echoed by international legal observers. You never extradited Kanu. You kidnapped him. You kidnapped him. Earlier in July 2022, the United Nations Working Group on Arbitrary Detention issued a report calling for Kanu's immediate release and compensation. The UN body found his detention to be arbitrary and unlawful, citing violations of both domestic and international law. It urged Nigeria to ensure his freedom and to conduct a thorough investigation into his extraordinary rendition. Despite this resolution, the Nigerian authorities have not complied, and Kanu remains in the custody of the DSS in Abuja, where he has been detained since the return from Kenya. You know what's about the United Nations? They don't force countries like that. But let me tell you, for every resolution you disobey in the UN, is like a part of your body you are cutting. Or let me say, for every resolution you disobey in the UN, is like a cup of water you are adding to your cup. And one day, it's going to full.